Prepare for a dark and unsettling journey. Weapons 2025 unfolds in a small village where, at precisely 2:17 a.m., 17 children mysteriously disappear from their homes. What begins as an unexplained incident soon unravels into a nightmarish tale of black magic, hidden truths, and a desperate fight against forces beyond human understanding. This is the complete recap of Weapons 2025. In a quiet little village, something terrifying happened one night that shook everyone to the core. At exactly 2:17 a.m., 17 children mysteriously left their homes and vanished into the darkness. When the CCTV footage was reviewed, the entire village was horrified. The children's movements looked unnatural, almost as if some invisible force was controlling them. Nobody knew whether this was the work of humans or something supernatural, but fear spread everywhere. And this is the moment where the movie quietly hints that what's happening is tied to something deeper, a kind of magic connected to personal identity objects. The police searched day and night, yet not a single clue surfaced. Suspicion soon fell on a school teacher named Justin because every missing child happened to be from her class. Strangely, only one student, Alex, remained untouched. Justin, already quiet and reserved, found herself under immense pressure. Parents accused her of witchcraft, and in anger, some even vandalized her car with splashes of red paint, a sign of vengeance. She tried to cooperate with the police, but her words were dismissed. Even her friend Paul, an officer, couldn't do much to help. And this is where the movie hits one of its most unsettling points. The truth is right there, but no one wants to believe it until it's way too late. But the real twist came when Justin noticed Alex. She recalled that Alex's father used to pick him up daily, yet for the past month, the boy had been walking home alone. Following him, she discovered his house covered with newspapers on the windows, sealing it from the outside world. Through a small gap, she spotted two eerie, unmoving shadows inside. Were these Alex's parents? The atmosphere was so unsettling, it sent chills down her spine. Justin called Paul, but instead of support, she was scolded, reminded again that she herself was still under suspicion. Determined, she kept watch outside Alex's house all night. Suddenly, a strange woman stepped out. Around the same time, someone secretly cut off a lock of Justin's hair, hinting that something sinister was at play. Meanwhile, the story shifted to an engineer named Archer, whose daughter was one of the missing children. He replayed the CCTV footage again and again, convinced that her behavior wasn't normal, that she too was under some unseen influence. Furious and broken, Archer confronted Justin at a community meeting, and later, in his rage, threw paint on her car before collapsing at home in exhaustion. But that night, as the clock struck past 2, something unexpected happened to Archer. That night, Archer was startled awake by strange noises. To his shock, he saw his missing daughter standing silently in the room. Before he could react, she bolted out of the house. Archer chased after her, running until he reached the edge of the forest. There he saw something uncanny, a mansion that looked exactly like his own home. His daughter ran straight inside, and to his disbelief, the interior was an exact replica too. Rushing upstairs, Archer found her lying in bed. Relieved, he sat beside her, only for the child's face to suddenly transform into something monstrous. Screaming, Archer jolted awake, realizing it was just a dream. But the dream felt so real it sparked an idea. He pulled out a map and traced the directions where the children had disappeared. Checking a neighbor's CCTV footage, Archer discovered that all the paths the children took led to the same point. Something sinister was drawing them to one place. Meanwhile, at school, a disturbing event unfolded. Alex's aunt arrived, demanding that the principal release the boy from classes. When he refused, she revealed her true intentions. She pulled out a thorny wooden stick and an old bell, chanting strange words as if casting a spell. The principal's eyes went blank, and moments later he violently attacked his colleague. It became clear. This woman was a master of dark magic. She took the strand of Justin's hair that had been stolen earlier, wrapped it around the stick, and snapped it. Instantly, the principal's body twisted unnaturally, moving like the missing children on the night they vanished. Controlled like a puppet, he bolted toward the door. At the same time, Archer, rushing toward the mysterious location, crossed paths with Justin. Before they could exchange words, the sight before them froze their blood. The principal, drenched in blood, came charging at Justin like a madman. He slammed her to the ground, leaving Archer struggling to pull him off. Despite Archer's efforts, the man's inhuman strength was overwhelming. He truly was a puppet of dark sorcery. Seizing the moment, Justin escaped, sprinting to her car and speeding away. But the possessed principal gave chase, his glowing red eyes locked on her. The pursuit ended violently when he reached a crossroads, only to be struck by a speeding vehicle. The brutal impact brought the madness to a halt. For now, both Justin and Archer, battered and shaken, were rushed to the hospital. There, Archer finally apologized to Justin. He admitted that he had witnessed the principal's strange behavior firsthand and was now convinced the children's disappearance was tied to black magic. Showing her the map, he explained that all the children's paths converged at one chilling location, Alex's house. Without wasting another moment, the two set out together. Leaving the hospital, Justin and Archer headed straight toward Alex's house. But as soon as they reached the neighborhood, they noticed something strange. Officer Paul's patrol car was already parked outside. Justin was taken aback. And this is where the movie makes a brilliant move, because what Paul saw that night explains everything and complicates everything. Here, the story cuts to a flashback. On the second night after the children went missing, when the entire village was drowning in fear and rumors, Paul was ordered to increase his patrols. During his rounds, he spotted a suspicious man lurking in the neighborhood. Quietly following him, Paul caught him attempting a burglary. He managed to arrest the man, but in the struggle, a strange needle pricked Paul's finger. Angry, Paul struck the thief, then remembered that his body cam must have recorded the whole incident. Not wanting trouble, he decided to cover it up and let the thief go with a warning. But the next day, to Paul's surprise, the same man showed up at the police station. Paul assumed he had come to file a complaint and, panicking, tried to stop him. That's when the man revealed the truth. He hadn't come to complain, but to give information. The night before, he had actually broken into Alex's house. The windows had been sealed with newspapers, and inside he felt a chilling coldness. Alex's parents were sitting silently on the sofa, their bodies so lifeless they looked like wax figures. Assuming they were statues, he continued to search for valuables. But when he opened the basement door, his blood ran cold. In the pitch-black cellar, he saw a group of children standing eerily still, their faces pale and expressionless. And this is the moment where the movie makes it clear that Gladys isn't using simple mind control. What we're witnessing feels much older, something ritualistic, almost ancestral. Greed turned into fear. He decided to reveal the truth to the police in hopes of earning the reward money. Hearing this, Paul was furious but also disturbed. The man's story matched Justin's earlier suspicion that something was deeply wrong inside Alex's house. With no time to waste, Paul forced the thief, named James, into his car and drove to the mysterious home. Leaving James in the car, Paul rang the doorbell. To his shock, the door opened and he was invited inside. James, waiting outside, grew uneasy as time passed. Then suddenly, Paul stormed out, grabbed James, and dragged him inside against his will. Moments later, Justin and Archer arrived at the scene. Seeing Paul's patrol car outside, they tried calling him. But just then, Paul himself appeared at the door, waving for them to come in. Relieved, they followed. But once inside, the house felt empty. No parents, no children, nobody. They barely had a chance to process it when the unthinkable happened. Paul and James suddenly turned on them, their movements unnatural, their eyes glazed. They weren't acting like ordinary men anymore. They were puppets, possessed by the same dark magic that had taken the children. Archer was seized by James, while Justin was chased through the house by Paul, now a violent shell of his former self. Inside the cursed house, chaos erupted. Paul cornered Justin and wrapped his hands around her throat, determined to strangle her. Desperate to survive, she grabbed his pistol from his holster and fired straight into his head. The sound of the gunshot silenced everything. Archer, who had been pinned down by James, finally broke free. Both of them gasped for breath, relieved the nightmare was over. But they weren't alone. Hidden in the shadows, Alex had been watching everything. His mind replayed the horrors of the past 2 weeks. At first, life for Alex had been normal, until his Aunt Gladys moved into the house under the guise of helping the family. One day after returning from school, Alex found his parents sitting lifeless at the dining table, their bodies frozen like statues. Gladys revealed her true nature with a sinister smile. "If you ever tell anyone my secret, your parents will die." To prove her power, she performed dark rituals, forcing Alex's terrified parents to drive thorns into their own heads. From that day on, Alex lived in fear. He rushed home from school daily, trying to feed his weakened parents, while his aunt continued her twisted black magic. Soon she confessed the truth. Her body was failing. To survive, she needed human souls. When her spells on Alex's parents failed, she turned to a darker plan, using Alex to lure other children. She ordered him to steal his classmates' belongings, name tags and personal items. Helpless, Alex obeyed, hoping that if Gladys grew stronger, the nightmare would end. Using the stolen items, Gladys performed a ritual. That very night, as shown at the beginning of the story, several children mysteriously left their homes at 2:17 a.m. and marched straight to Alex's house. To avoid suspicion, she hid them in the forest, while Alex, torn apart by guilt and fear, remained silent, his parents' lives hanging in the balance. When Paul first arrived at the house, his mind had already fallen under Gladys's control. Soon after, Justin and Archer entered, struggling to restrain both Paul and James, who fought like puppets of dark sorcery. Archer broke away, rushing into the basement in search of his daughter, but he fell straight into one of Gladys's magical traps. Meanwhile, Justin was still searching for Alex when Archer reappeared, his eyes lifeless, his movements stiff. He seized Justin, revealing that he, too, was now under Gladys's spell. Finally, the true villain emerged. Aunt Gladys stepped forward, her dark shadow spreading across the room. It was clear she had fully possessed Archer's body and was ready to destroy Justin next. But just as she prepared to strike, Alex stepped out of his room. In his hands was the same enchanted wooden staff she had used for her rituals. Over the past days, he had quietly studied her magic, learning how to counter it. With determination, he smeared blood on the staff, wrapping it with strands of his aunt's fallen hair. For the first time, the boy who had been her pawn was ready to fight back. As Alex snapped the staff in two, the effect was immediate. The children locked in the basement suddenly erupted as though released from an invisible grip. Screaming, they smashed through the door and charged straight at Aunt Gladys. Her frail body could no longer resist. The swarm of enraged children dragged her down and tore her apart. With her death, the dark spell shattered. Archer collapsed to the ground, free from her control, finally returning to himself. But the relief didn't last. All around them, the missing children and Alex's parents remained frozen in place. Their bodies stood upright, their faces blank and empty. Whatever Gladys had taken from them wasn't coming back. They were shells, present in form but not in spirit, like something essential had been drained forever. And that, friends, is the haunting mystery at the heart of this terrifying story. But the movie leaves us with one final question that refuses to fade even after the credits roll. If their bodies are still standing, then where did their souls go? Where did their souls go?